The issue now for the economy is will regional banks or larger banks in the States decide that they need to de-risk their balance sheets just in case? It's a precautionary move, an insurance policy, if you like. And if the banking sector decides it wants to have less risk on its balance sheet because of what has happened with Silicon Valley Bank, with First Republic Bank, if they do that, that means that they will be lending less money. And that's important because after 2 years of disastrous negative real wage growth, consumers, particularly lower income consumers, have been very dependent on using money borrowed from banks to keep on spending. So that's why it's so important. It's less about the volatility in bank shares. It's a lot more about, do banks take out insurance and de-risk their balance sheet?
Finally, let me get your thoughts on recession risks and inflation. You've mentioned that you think inflation might start going down in the United States. Some people counter that inflation is here to stay over the longer term because of fundamental and structural changes that we're seeing, the green transition, the reshoring of supply chains and what have you. So do you think inflation is here to stay, and what are the chances of a hard landing and a deep recession in the U.S. Sometime by the end of this year?
So on the inflation story, remember, countries have the inflation rate they want in the longer term. If you want 2% inflation in the long term in the States, you get 2% inflation. Now, there may be hard choices involved in getting that, but you can engineer 2% inflation. If you have higher prices in one sector, you just change demand to reduce prices in another sector. That's all that happens. Reshoring is not particularly inflationary, in my view. A lot of the localization of production will actually lower inflation. You know, think about the cost of buying music. 15 years ago, you bought a CD. We've now localized production. You download music to your phone, and the cost has collapsed as a result. So we shouldn't just assume that, you know, globalization lowers inflation, reshoring raises it. That's not necessarily true. With regards to the hard landing risks, there are risks. Obviously, there are risks. The whole debt ceiling farce in the United States is unnecessarily adding uncertainty. And as I said, if banks really tighten credit standards, that could do a lot of damage. But overall, though, we're not seeing too aggressive a tightening of bank lending standards. I think even U.S. politicians will be sensible about the need to manage the debt ceiling debate. So I don't see a huge problem there. In which case, I think, you know, the middle-income households in the States still have relatively good amounts of savings that they can use to support the economy. Unemployment remains very low, which means people have job security. That combination, I think, keeps the risk of a really bad downturn at a very low probability over the course, certainly of the next 6 to 9 months.